In this Lightroom video, we're going to have a look at a few simple edits we can make to tidy and enhance our image. And these are the sort of typical edits that you'll often make on images regardless of the subject. So this is my starting file here. So you can see initially our image is looking rather disappointing, but we can improve things with a few quick tweaks in Lightroom to come up with something much more pleasing. So let's get cracking here. So we'll go to my starting image here, and the first thing we can see here, there's a glaring problem. Our horizon is slightly wonky. Now there's a quick fix for this in the Lightroom Develop module here. If we scroll down, we can go to the Transform panel here, and if we click on Level, Lightroom will automatically detect our horizon and level it out for us. Now I also want to go into my lens corrections while I'm here and check remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. Let's have a look at the tones first of all. So we'll go right back up to the top here and the panels on the right and go into the basic panel. And I want to see if I can pull a bit of detail out of those dark areas. So if I increase the shadows, you can see how we're able to do this. Now, I might also want to try dropping down the highlights a touch, and you can see how that allows me to pull a bit more detail out of those clouds. Now, we don't want to push this too far because it starts to look sort of slightly unrealistic. So I'll bring that down a little bit until we find a nice balance. Now I think the colours are slightly off as well. It's looking a little cool for my liking. So I could try using the white balance tools here to fix things. I could go into the white balance settings here and choose a preset, or I can use the white balance eyedropper tool here, and we can click over a point in the image that we know to be neutral and lacking in colour. So I could perhaps try clicking on the white cliffs over here, and you can see how that changes my temperature and tint settings here. Now we could also get a little bit creative with our white balance settings here and just try pushing the temperature slightly more towards the right to warm up my image, and perhaps push the tint towards magenta as well, just to give my image that nice warm sunset feel. And we can enhance that sunset feel further if we go down to our Vibrance and Saturation sliders here. Now Vibrance enhances the weaker colours in the image, so we can usually push Vibrance slightly further than Saturation, and Saturation will target and enhance all of the colours at once. If we push that too far, then our sunset colours start to look unrealistic, so we'll keep that fairly low. And I think while we're in the presence settings here, we could try increasing clarity just to add a bit of punch and pull some more detail out of the midtones, and you can see how that has a nice effect on the water there. Now I've noticed there are a few problems around the image here. We've got a few sensor marks. If we zoom in closer here, you can see there are some sensor marks here in the sky, and you'll often find you'll see sensor marks appearing more when you use a narrower aperture like f16 here. So you'll often see sensor marks more with landscapes than with other types of image. Of course, the best thing to do is to regularly clean your camera sensor, but the odd sensor mark is often unavoidable. We can fix things using the spot removal tool here in Lightroom, which you'll find in the toolbar at the top right here. So we can grab the tool and we can set it to either clone or heal. Now for sensor marks, healing is usually best. We can use the left and right square bracket keys to resize the brush tip, or we can go into the size settings here, but it's often easier to use those keyboard shortcuts. And we can zoom in a little bit closer and then use the spot removal tool here and just click over a point in the image. Now we get two circles appear, so we can drag the source circle to choose a different area if necessary. We can just continue painting to remove these little sensor marks. Now we have a handy view option down here. If we check visualize spots, then we get a view that helps us to spot those sensor marks. We can adjust the sensitivity of the view here by using this little slider. And I know there's a little mark down here in the sea. And let's have a look around the rest of the frame. Might need to just adjust our visualize spots option here, and we can see there are a few other marks appearing in the sky here. And it's a simple matter to dab over them with the spot removal tool to fix those areas. And once we're done, we can uncheck visualize spots. Now there's another problem here that I've spotted. If we zoom in a little bit closer, you can see there's a little bit of flare here, and that's probably been caused by a bit of spray from the sea settling on the filter. So what I can do is switch to the clone option now and paint over that area. And then I can adjust the source area here. I might want to also increase the feather just so that there's more of a softening around the edges of my cloning here. And that's looking much better. Now I think we're nearly there with our image. We could perhaps add some sharpening using the detail panel, which you'll find on the right over here. Now this is best judged with 100% view, just so we can see the actual pixels. So it's best to go to 100% in the navigator here. And let's also just move down to see some of this detail at the bottom down here. Now the sharpening amount slider here controls the overall strength of the sharpening effect, whereas the radius slider below controls the distance from edges in which that sharpening occurs. So I'm going to set the radius around about 1.2. Amount, we can just push that until we get a nice level of sharpening. Somewhere around about 98 works for us here. Now we can use the masking slider here as well. If we zoom back out to see our whole image here, we can hold Alt and drag masking to get a view that shows us different areas appear as we drag. Now, the black areas are going to be excluded from the sharpening effect, so we can restrict the sharpening just to the important edges in the image using the masking slider like this. And I think we're nearly there with our image. We could perhaps just add a touch more punch. I'm going to go into my tone curve and just make an S-shaped curve like this, just to boost the overall contrast, and perhaps finish off by lifting the shadows a touch more. And that's my finished image. So there we go. That's how to apply a few simple fixes using the Lightroom Develop module to take your image from something that's slightly disappointing to something you'd be happy to share or display.